Hey guys, tonight we slip into the restless, buzzing childhood of a kid who never quite fit inside the lines. You settle into the story the way you'd settle into a warm blanket, and right away you're standing in snowy Ohio, where a young Jake Paul is sprinting across a backyard like someone poured battery acid into his sneakers. He's loud, he's chaotic, and he's already trying to turn life into a spectacle long before anyone hands him a camera. You probably won't survive this level of energy in real life, but luckily you're just listening. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're awake enough, tell me your city and local time in the comments. I always love seeing how many different time zones drift off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start in Westlake, Ohio, a quiet suburb that feels almost too calm for a kid like Jake. You walk through those neighborhoods, wide streets, tidy lawns, the smell of fresh-cut grass, and you can feel how a boy built out of pure adrenaline must have bounced off these walls like a pinball. Jake and his older brother Logan were the type of siblings who didn't just wrestle, they reenacted WWE storylines in the living room while their dad pretended not to watch them body slam each other onto couch cushions. Historians still argue whether this household encouraged chaos or simply learned to survive it. Jake's childhood is full of that noisy, half-wild energy. Biking, skating, climbing onto roofs he definitely wasn't supposed to be on. He was competitive in the way some kids breathe, automatically. You see him wrestling in school gyms, trying football for a season or two, sprinting through fields until his legs felt like they'd detach and run ahead of him. His dad, Greg Paul, pushed his sons to be tough, athletic, outgoing, and maybe to speak a little louder than necessary, which explains a lot if we're being honest. A mainstream fact slips into the quiet. Jake really was a standout wrestler. Before any cameras, before the fame, he dreamed of state championships. He wanted to be known for something, anything, and you feel that hunger humming underneath everything he does. And then there's Pam, his mom, who balanced the household with a softness that didn't stand a chance against two miniature Tasmanian devils racing around her. But she tried. She recorded home videos, cheered them on, and laughed at their antics even when she probably wanted to take a nap for 3 years. It's easy to picture her watching them grow and thinking, one day they'll channel this energy into something. She didn't know that something would involve the entire internet. You walk through Jake's middle school hallways, the buzz of fluorescent lights, the clatter of lockers, kids shouting over each other like it's a contest. Jake is one of the kids who just needs to be seen, not in a desperate way, more like a puppy jumping in a pile of leaves just because the leaves exist. He starts cracking jokes, doing stunts, making friends laugh. That hunger for attention becomes a kind of engine. He isn't embarrassed by the spotlight, he runs straight into it. A quirky little detail floats up now. Jake used to film funny clips on old phones long before Vine existed. Half-baked comedy sketches, flips gone wrong, random nonsense that probably made 0 sense but made him laugh, and making himself laugh was reason enough. By high school, Jake is juggling too many identities at once. Athlete, class clown, mischief maker, kid who pushes teachers' patience to the outer limits. He's not mean, not cruel, just loud, relentless, and constantly operating at the wrong speed for everyone else's comfort. You wander the hallways with him, watching him goof off with friends, record little videos between classes, and slowly sharpen that instinct for what gets a reaction. And then, like the universe finally decides to give these chaos-powered kids a toy worthy of them, Vine shows up. 6 seconds of video. That's all you get. 6 seconds to make someone laugh, gasp, scream, or share. Jake tries it, then tries it again, then again, and suddenly those 6-second clips become the perfect container for his energy, a place where loud, weird, fast, unpredictable behavior works. You see him in the backyard, flipping over random objects, in the kitchen yelling a punchline, in the driveway pulling a stunt he probably shouldn't be unsupervised. And each time he uploads it with the blind confidence of someone who doesn't know failure yet. Historians still argue whether Jake rose because he was talented or because he was fearless enough to post absolutely anything that popped into his head. Maybe both. What you do know is this: something starts shifting. The views creep up, the followers tick upward, notifications multiply, and for the first time, Jake sees numbers that prove what he always felt, that the world responds when he creates noise. This becomes his fuel. The louder the reaction, the harder he pushes. You follow him through the living room again, where he and Logan are bouncing ideas off each other like two hyperactive radio towers. They start collaborating, pranking each other, escalating their antics. Their family home becomes their first set. Their neighborhood becomes their first stage. Ohio begins to feel too small, too quiet, too slow for a kid like Jake. He wants bigger rooms to shout in, bigger audiences to chase, bigger arenas to fill. And that spark, the one that started in a living room wrestling match, grows into something sharper, more intentional. He wants to entertain the world. And as you float quietly through this early chapter, watching him stumble, shout, laugh, and run headfirst into the future, you can sense that the boy who grew up sprinting across backyards is about to sprint into an entirely different arena: the internet. You glide forward now, carried by that familiar mix of chaos and momentum, straight into the era where 6 seconds of video become the spark that blows Jake Paul's world wide open. It's early Vine, a strange, magical, slightly cursed corner of the internet where comedy is measured in milliseconds and nobody is thinking too hard about consequences yet. You drift beside Jake through these digital hallways, watching him experiment like a kid with a new chemistry set who absolutely should not be left unsupervised. Vine is perfect for Jake, too perfect, honestly. 6 seconds means there's no time for overthinking, no time for editing, no time to second-guess a wild idea. It rewards boldness, volume, speed, and sheer audacity, all things Jake has been unintentionally training for since he learned to run. You watch him film goofy skits, random pranks, offbeat challenges, anything that gets a reaction. He's jumping over things, falling off things, yelling punchlines, and somehow turning suburban Ohio into a mini movie set. A mainstream fact floats up in the quiet. Jake became one of Vine's fastest-growing personalities, pulling millions of followers in what felt like a blink. One day, he's uploading videos to amuse himself and maybe a few classmates. The next day, he's part of the Vine elite, a constellation of creators figuring out fame on the fly. And it's wild to watch. You hover over his shoulder as he checks his phone, eyes widening, grins spreading, every time the follower count leaps. Those notifications start pouring in so fast they feel like confetti. For Jake, attention isn't just validation, it's potential, fuel, permission to dream unreasonably big. A quirky detail stirs into the scene. Many early Vine stars, Jake included, recorded clips in grocery stores, parking lots, and random public spaces where confused strangers just pretended not to notice. If you've ever wondered why Vine felt slightly unhinged, it's because half the videos were filmed at 1 a.m. near the frozen pizza aisle. But behind the silliness, something sharper forms. Jake studies what works: timing, pacing, relatability, shock value. He treats his Vine account like a laboratory. Does yelling help? Yes. Does physical comedy help? Absolutely. Does being unpredictable help? More than anything. Soon he's collaborating with other rising creators. You drift into these group clips, chaotic clusters of teenagers throwing themselves into fast jokes, quick stunts, and the kind of energy normally reserved for caffeine overdoses. They bounce ideas off each other, escalate each other, and slowly build the early blueprint of what will later become influencer culture. Historians still argue whether Vine collapsed because it couldn't monetize creators properly or because the combined energy of Jake Paul, Logan Paul, Lele Pons, King Batch, and Curtis Lepore simply tore a hole in the fabric of the internet. You're free to choose your preferred theory. As fame grows, Jake becomes more intentional. You see him taking mental notes whenever a clip performs better than expected. He begins factoring in lighting, camera angles, and reactions. He plans his punchlines, but still performs them with wild spontaneity. That competitive streak from wrestling, it hasn't gone away. Now he wants to dominate a new arena, this digital stage, and he throws himself into it with total commitment. And then comes the moment that changes everything, the call from Disney Channel. You watch it play out. Jake pacing around a kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, eyes widening as he realizes he's being asked to audition for Bizaardvark, a comedy show about two young creators who perform silly songs on the internet. Jake gets cast. He moves from Ohio to Los Angeles, and you follow him as his childhood world gets swapped for palm trees, studio lots, and the buzzing hum of cameras. LA is bigger than life, busier, louder, perfect for a kid who thrives in noise. You float beside him through the Disney set, bright lights, colorful walls, rehearsals, retakes, the endless rhythm of TV production. Jake throws himself into it with reckless enthusiasm, and suddenly Vine fame is no longer just internet noise, it's a career. But he doesn't slow down on social media, not for a second. Between shooting scenes, he's still filming Vines, pumping out YouTube videos, and chasing every spark of attention like a dragon hoarding gold coins. He wants to be everywhere at once, and somehow he almost succeeds. You follow him into an apartment full of creators who stay up until 3 a.m. brainstorming videos, cables everywhere, half-eaten takeout boxes, whiteboards covered in half-finished ideas. It's messy, creative, exhausting, and a little bit magical, like watching the invention of a new kind of entertainment in real time. Slowly, Vine starts collapsing. The app that launched his career begins to crumble. Creators scatter, some fade, some panic. And Jake? You watch him pivot so fast it's almost dizzying. He launches his YouTube channel hard. Daily vlogging becomes his new adrenaline source. The chaos of his life becomes the content. Friendships, pranks, stunts, spontaneous adventures, and sometimes questionable decisions. It's here that the seeds of Team 10 begin to sprout. You can already sense it growing. Jake wants to build something bigger than himself, a house full of creators, a team, a brand, a factory of non-stop content and ambition. You can feel that idea buzzing in the back of his mind like a humming neon sign. But before you get there, you pass through one last moment in the Vine era. Jake standing on a balcony at sunset, phone in hand, watching the final days of the app that made him famous. The sky is warm orange, the air still, the world slowing down even as his mind races ahead. You can almost hear him thinking, if one app can make me, then I can make myself bigger. There's a flicker of determination, maybe a hint of ego, maybe both, but it's enough to propel him into the next stage with even more force. By the time this chapter closes, you're drifting through LA with him, the city lights humming, the YouTube logo glowing on his laptop screen, the smell of energy drinks, the promise of something bigger on the horizon. Vine may be dying, but Jake Paul is only getting started. You drift now into the moment where Jake Paul stops being just a creator and starts trying to become an empire. The air feels different here. Louder, faster, more electric. It's Los Angeles at full blast, and you follow Jake as he steps into the world of YouTube daily vlogging with the force of a firecracker dropped into a blender. There's no pause button, no breath, no quiet mornings. You're simply dropped into the chaos like a guest who arrived at the wrong time and the right time simultaneously. The camera becomes Jake's new natural habitat. You feel it in the way he wakes up, grabs it before brushing his teeth, and talks to it like an old friend who thrives on chaos. You drift through his early YouTube days, fast cuts, jokes, pranks, challenges, accidental injuries, intentional injuries, more yelling than should legally be allowed in a residential area. He films everything, everything. Neighbors, not thrilled, but Jake, energized. A mainstream fact floats into view. Jake launched Team 10 in 2017, a social media incubator where creators lived together, collaborated, and built massive followings. It was like a startup, a frat house, a reality show, and a hurricane all sharing a single zip code. You step into the mansion with him now. The door slams behind you, and instantly it feels like a tornado wearing sneakers. Hallways shaking with footsteps, music thumping, cameras running non-stop, people practicing pranks in the living room like a fire drill, whiteboards filled with video ideas that range from pretty harmless to this may require a lawyer. It smells a little like energy drinks and ambition. Jake moves through it all like he's piloting a rocket ship made of cardboard, fully committed, slightly unstable, and constantly one spark away from either change the game greatness or blow up in your face disaster. You watch him assemble a lineup of young creators, singers, dancers, pranksters, vloggers, each hungry for an audience, for their moment, for that hit of viral adrenaline. Historians still argue whether Team 10 was a brilliant business idea or the digital equivalent of giving teenagers a theme park and no adult supervision. Observing from here, it's clearly both. Jake is a leader in the only way he knows how, fast-paced, impulsive, endlessly confident. He teaches them how to film, how to edit, how to pace videos, how to create story arcs inside daily chaos. The house becomes a content factory. Camera flashes, drone shots, shouting matches, brand deals, merch drops, and the occasional fire truck showing up for reasons. A quirky detail floats up like a forgotten balloon. At one point, fans literally lined up outside the Team 10 house hoping to catch a glimpse of Jake or the crew. Imagine living in a neighborhood where teenagers chant, "It's every day, bro," at 7 a.m. Peace was not an option. And it's not just the content, there's also the business. Jake treats YouTube like a sport, refreshing analytics, planning growth, obsessing over watch time. He reinvents his channel into episodes, arcs, conflicts, resolutions. Each vlog is a mini reality show. Each day he tries to outdo the previous one. Stunts get bigger, pranks get more elaborate, storylines get messier, and you float through it all like a ghost with earplugs. But the bigger the empire grows, the heavier the spotlight becomes. Controversies start piling up. Noise complaints, public stunts, jokes taken too far, house drama spilling online, rumors swirling. You drift through the tension like fog, watching Jake try to balance being a leader, entertainer, and 20-year-old who hasn't figured out where the brakes are. The Disney chapter ends abruptly. Jake is removed from Bizarre in the middle of filming, a moment that hits him like a cold wave, no matter how loudly he pretends it doesn't. You see him sitting in a quiet room for once, camera off, trying to figure out how to spin a setback into opportunity. That restless Ohio kid inside him wakes up again, competitive, stubborn, ready to push back even harder. He throws himself into YouTube with the kind of intensity that should probably come with a warning label. New creators join Team 10, others leave. Controversy grows, but so does the audience. It's like watching someone juggle fire, impressive, reckless, and one gust of wind away from a face full of regret. Yet underneath the chaos, you begin to sense something shifting. Jake's craving for attention starts blending with an itch for impact. He begins asking questions out loud about purpose, about growth, about what comes next. It's faint at first, like a distant radio signal drifting into the room. Late one night, you see him pacing through the mansion's kitchen, empty energy drink can on the counter, camera finally off. He stares out the window, thinking. Sometime soon he'll reinvent himself again, but right now it's just a quiet moment in a house not built for quiet moments. Team 10 eventually fractures under the weight of ambition and burnout, like many early internet collectives. Some members go on to careers of their own, others fade into the noise, and Jake, he feels the empire he built slipping between his fingers. But that competitive fire, it doesn't go out. It twists, evolves, searches for a new outlet, and it finds one. A boxing ring, an arena where chaos becomes discipline, where adrenaline becomes structure, where noise becomes focus. A place where shouting and running and wrestling and craving a spotlight can finally be sharpened into something real. You feel the shift when it happens, subtle at first but powerful. Jake is about to transform again, but this time into something no one saw coming. The loud kid from Ohio is heading toward a fight, and you're walking beside him into the ring.
You feel the atmosphere shift as you step with her into one of the most turbulent, transformative chapters of her life. Gone is the pure glow of early fame. Now the air crackles with tension, flashes from paparazzi cameras, and the low rumble of public opinion swirling like an unpredictable storm. You're not watching the rise anymore. You're watching the reinvention, the resistance, and the remarkable resilience that would shape Taylor Swift into something far deeper than a pop star. It starts subtly. You trail beside her through a hotel hallway as her team whispers about tabloid headlines, petty dramas, and the internet spinning stories faster than she can write songs. She brushes her hair back, half listening, half exhausted, the weight of expectations pressing on her shoulders like invisible armor. It smells faintly of perfume, fresh paper, and whatever anxiety feels like when it sits in the air. Fame once felt like a stage, now it feels like a microscope. A mainstream fact settles in. Around this time, Taylor was at the center of multiple public controversies, some sparked by others, some blown wildly out of proportion, all amplified by a culture obsessed with tearing down the people it once praised. You see how the noise sharpens her edges. She smiles less brightly. She retreats more often. She starts writing differently. One night, you find her curled in the corner of her apartment, laptop open, typing fiercely. The room smells like cinnamon candles and rain hitting the windows. Lyrics scatter across the screen, angrier, sharper, more self-aware. She pauses, backspaces, rewrites. She's not trying to be lovable, she's trying to be honest, and sometimes honesty requires a little lightning. Here's your light joke for this section. At one point she mutters, "If people want a villain so badly, maybe I should give them one with good hair." The fact that she meant it halfway and joked it halfway makes it funnier. She disappears from the public eye for a while, something almost unheard of for someone at her level. You follow her into quiet spaces, long walks, private songwriting sessions, late-night kitchen conversations with friends who understand her heart. She bakes, she thinks, she heals, she regrounds herself away from the noise. Historians still argue whether her disappearance was a strategic retreat, an emotional necessity, or an act of self-preservation. Following her through dim rooms and quiet forests, you suspect it was all three. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step back from a world demanding more than you can give. Then reputation arrives like a thunderclap. You're beside her in the studio as she leans over the microphone, voice low, confident, controlled. Beats throb like footsteps on wet pavement. The songs aren't diary pages this time. They're battle cries, love letters, scars stitched with glitter.
"Look what you made me do" flashes like a warning sign, delicate pulses with vulnerability. The entire album feels like a woman taking back control of her narrative with claws sharpened by survival. The stadium tour that follows is colossal. You stand with her backstage as mechanical cobras coil around digital towers, lights strobe, and the stage stretches further than some neighborhoods. She steps into the roar of 60,000 people who sing every word back to her, not because they want perfection, but because they saw her fall and rise again. It feels like witnessing a phoenix reclaiming its sky. There's a quirky tidbit here. For the Reputation era, Taylor placed egg hunting eggs everywhere. Music videos, interviews, tour visuals. She turned her entire public identity into a scavenger hunt, leaning into mystery like an art form. You watch her giggle with her team as she hides tiny clues in the corner of a poster, whispering, "They'll find this in about 2 hours." But the storms eventually calm, and in the soft quiet that follows, you see her shift again. She steps away from dark beats and sharp edges and turns toward color, toward softness, toward joy. Lover blooms like a pastel sunrise, gentle, romantic, full of warmth. You walk beside her through a pastel studio where she paints metaphors with wide-open vulnerability. Cornelia Street, Lover, The Archer, each one feels like a deep breath after years of holding it in. Yet no era prepares you for the tectonic shift that comes next. The battle for her masters, her fight to own her own music. You can feel her anger simmering beneath her composure, the injustice of watching someone else own the diary pages she wrote with trembling teenage hands. But instead of folding, she strategizes. And here's your light joke for this section. When Taylor decided to re-record her albums, somewhere in the universe, an executive probably spilled his coffee. You follow her into the studio during the Taylor's version sessions. She sings with the voice of someone older, wiser, more sure of herself. It's like watching past and present shake hands. A reclamation, a resurrection, a reclamation so bold it becomes a blueprint for artist empowerment. The world watches as she takes back what was hers. And then, as if she wasn't busy rewriting music industry history, she does something else entirely. She disappears into quiet cabins and woodland studios to birth something unexpected, something fictional, emotional, mystical. Folklore. You're with her as she sits cross-legged on a cabin floor, surrounded by notebooks, guitar chords drifting like dust motes. The air is cool, the lighting soft, the whole world paused in pandemic stillness. She writes stories about people who don't exist. Augustine, Betty, the last great American dynasty. She explores emotions that feel older than she is. The songs seep out like whispered secrets in the dark. Evermore follows like winter after fall, gentle and melancholy. She turns her heartbreaks, her imagination, her quiet musings into something literary, something timeless. Historians still argue whether folklore marked her greatest artistic leap. Watching her sit in candlelight, brows furrowed, guitar resting against her knee, you suspect the answer is yes. You stand with her now on the invisible bridge between eras, country girl, pop icon, battle-scarred phoenix, cottagecore poet. Every version of her lingers in the shadows, braided into who she becomes next. And just when you think the story might be slowing down, it's only building momentum. You drift now into the part of Jake Paul's life that feels less like a highlight reel and more like a storm rolling in. Unpredictable, messy, loud, and strangely necessary. All the fame, all the noise, all the attention that once felt like fuel starts turning into something heavier, something that sticks to him like humidity, something he can't outrun even with all the cardio boxing has baked into him. This is the era of backlash, maturity, falling forward, falling backward, and learning the hard way that being famous doesn't make you invincible. It just makes your mistakes louder. You begin in the aftermath of his biggest boxing highs. The knockout clips go viral, analysts argue, fans celebrate, critics fume. For a moment, it seems like Jake has finally landed where he belongs, respected by some, feared by a few, and undeniably watched by everyone. But success comes with shadows. The internet remembers everything, and in this chapter, you feel the weight of that memory pressing onto Jake like a second gravity. Old controversies surface, past mistakes become memes again, clips from the Team 10 era get recirculated, reanalyzed, rejudged. Every misstep he ever took in his early 20s, and there were many, becomes a permanent artifact. You drift behind Jake on a quiet afternoon as he scrolls through comments, articles, reaction videos. Even with his bravado, even with his confidence, you sense the sting. Fame magnifies everything. Wins, losses, flaws, rumors, all of it. A mainstream fact flickers into the quiet. Jake faced multiple public controversies in the late 2010s. Neighborhood disputes, reckless stunts, legal trouble, and a reputation spiraling faster than he could control. Some of it was exaggerated, some of it was earned. All of it became part of the Jake Paul brand, whether he liked it or not. And you watch him wrestle with that legacy. Not physically, though he probably shadowboxes while thinking, but internally. That restless kid from Ohio who always needed a spotlight now has to stand in one that's far less flattering. Suddenly, attention isn't just applause, it's scrutiny, judgment, endless commentary. You move with him into a quieter phase, hotel rooms between fights, long flights, training camps in remote places, environments where there's space to think and nowhere to hide. For the first time, Jake begins speaking openly about his flaws, his growth, his mistakes. He talks about mental health, pressure, ego, the highs that feel like rocket fuel and the lows that feel like the silence after fireworks. Historians still argue whether this period marks true maturity or just the natural exhaustion of someone who spent years living at 120% volume. But watching him from up close, you feel something shifting. Jake is still loud, still competitive, still intense, but there's thoughtfulness now too. Sharp edges softening. A quirky detail surfaces, almost comforting. Jake starts journaling. Not in a cute calligraphy and stickers way, more like messy half-sentences, goals, frustrations, thoughts he needs to get out of his head before they choke him. Pages filled with chicken scratch handwriting and the occasional motivational quote he probably heard during boxing warm-ups. You drift into his training sessions during this era, not the flashy ones for Instagram, but the gritty, exhausting, headache-inducing ones after weeks of sleepless nights and pressure. You see him get hit hard, harder than before. You see him take it, learn from it, come back again. Not because the cameras are rolling, they aren't tonight, but because he's trying to become someone he can respect. Slowly, Jake's world shifts again. He branches out, business ventures, investments, promotional companies, brand building. He begins talking about long-term goals with a level of clarity you wouldn't expect from the kid who once lit furniture on fire for clout. You can sense him stepping into adulthood, one uncomfortable inch at a time. But fame is a double-edged glove, padded on one side, steel on the other. New scandals appear, old ones resurface. Headlines drag his name through mud even when the mud is from years ago. Every criticism from every era returns to the surface like driftwood after a storm. Jake tries to manage it, respond to it, grow from it, or ignore it depending on the day, and you're there for all of it. Public perception shifts like weather. Some people begin to respect his work ethic, his boxing discipline, his business moves. Others remain unconvinced. Some are simply tired of the spectacle,
And through all that noise, Jake keeps pushing forward with stubborn resilience. You follow him into late-night conversations with his inner circle, real friends, the kind who stick around even when the spotlight dims. They push him, call him out, keep him grounded. You hear Jake talk about wanting to evolve past the caricature version of himself, the internet villain, the drama magnet. He talks about legacy, redemption, reinvention, again. And you can feel that desire is real. In the quiet moments, icing injuries after sparring, riding in the back seat of a car after a loss, staring at the ceiling in a dark hotel room, Jake wrestles with the version of himself the internet knows and the version he wants to become. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, but transformation always is. This chapter isn't glamorous. It's not meant to be. It's the messy middle of a life lived loudly, the part where every consequence catches up, where ego meets reality, where growth happens in silence, not in thumbnails. The phase where a kid with a camera becomes a man trying to understand what all that noise meant. And as you drift out of this chapter, leaving behind the echoes of critics, headlines, mistakes, apologies, training sessions, wins, losses, and hard lessons, you can feel the next version of Jake Paul forming. Stronger, sharper, older, still flawed, still fiery, but finally aware that every chapter has consequences and that the next chapter has possibilities. He's not done. He's just getting ready for whatever the future demands of him next.
You drift now into the final chapter, the place where Jake Paul stands at the edge of everything he's already done, already broken, already rebuilt, and everything he hasn't yet dared to attempt. It's quieter here, not because his life is calm, it isn't, but because you've learned how to listen differently. You start hearing the rhythms beneath the noise, the ambition beneath the theatrics, the strategy beneath the swagger, the future forming beneath the mess of his past. This is the era of legacy, reinvention, again, and Jake Paul staring down the question of who he wants to be when the cameras one day stop rolling. You step with him into the modern version of his training camp. It's not like the early days, sloppy punches, chaotic sweats, half-motivated drills. Now everything is clean, structured, mature. The gym smells the same, sweat, leather, determination, but Jake moves through it differently. He's efficient, focused. The trainer doesn't have to yell as much anymore. Jake's internal voice is doing the work now. A mainstream fact flickers into the space. Jake founded Most Valuable Promotions, MVP, a legitimate boxing promotional company responsible not only for his own events, but for elevating fighters like Amanda Serrano, one of the most accomplished female boxers in history. The kid who once made backyard prank videos is now helping put real fighters in real arenas on real pay-per-view cards. It's not the kind of plot twist anyone predicted, but it's the kind that sticks. You follow him through meetings now, long tables, investor calls, brainstorming sessions. He talks differently here, slower, more deliberate. There's strategy in his tone, not just volume. He's still Jake, but this is the business version, the one who cares about brand control, financial growth, fight negotiations, market positioning. He used to chase attention, now he chases leverage. And through all of it, boxing is still the spine. It keeps him disciplined, grounded, focused. But the critics remain as persistent as ever. You drift through social media comments, sports forums, boxing journalists arguing like philosophers in a heated debate. Some still treat him as a sideshow. Others reluctantly accept his presence. Some admit he's changed boxing media. Historians still argue whether he saved a piece of the sport or simply disrupted it enough to make people uneasy.
Jake absorbs all of it, the praise, the doubt, the insults, the analysis, and you can feel him learning to let it fuel him without consuming him. He's older now, not old, but old enough for the edges to soften and the purpose to sharpen. A quirky detail surfaces. Jake travels now with journals, planners, and an entire backpack of self-improvement books, the kind you skim in airports and promise to finish someday. He actually reads them, takes notes, applies them. You wouldn't have guessed that in the Team 10 days, but this chapter is full of little surprises. You step onto his balcony at night, one of those quiet views overlooking whatever city he's staying in for training. He sits there sometimes, hoodie on, headphones playing something surprisingly calm, thinking about fights that haven't happened yet and goals he hasn't said out loud. The biggest ambitions are still in front of him. Facing top-ranked boxers, building boxing events that rival major promoters, elevating underappreciated fighters, possibly entering MMA, expanding his business portfolio, stepping deeper into entertainment and production, repairing parts of his public image, maybe even writing a new legacy from scratch. And you can feel the weight and excitement of all of it swirling around him. His relationship with fans has changed too. Some who hated him now respect his work ethic. Some who loved him now watch from a distance, unsure what to make of the transformation. And some remain loyal to the journey, through the chaos, the controversies, the knockouts, the reinventions. You drift into one of his training nights, late, empty gym, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. He stands in front of the mirror, gloves on, throwing slow, precise punches. Not for the cameras, not for promotion, just for mastery. You can see it in his eyes now. He's not trying to prove people wrong anymore. He's trying to prove himself right. Legacy is a big word, too big for someone in his 20s maybe, but Jake thinks about it anyway. He thinks about what he'll leave behind when he's no longer the headline, the villain, the disruptor, the rookie boxer with something to prove. Will he be remembered as the loud kid from Vine, the Team 10 founder, the controversy magnate, the boxing renegade, the promoter, the entrepreneur, the guy who changed influencer culture forever, the fighter who wouldn't quit? Legacies aren't chosen. They're built, one chapter at a time, even the messy ones. And as you float gently through this final chapter, the noise of his past becomes distant, the controversies fade, the laughter of old vlogs drifts further away. What remains is someone who refuses to stop evolving, someone who turned mistakes into momentum, chaos into discipline, and fame into fuel. You watch him wrap his hands before another sparring round, the tape stretching tight against his skin. There's no audience in this room, no spotlight, just Jake Paul preparing for whatever life asks him next. He glances at himself in the mirror, not the kid from Ohio, not the Vine star, not the YouTuber, not the walking headline, and not even the boxer. Just a man in motion, still changing, still learning, still fighting, literally and figuratively. And as the gym lights dim in your mind, as this story settles into its final quiet breath, you realize something important. Jake Paul's story isn't finished, not even close. It's simply shifting into the next round. A new version of him waits just beyond the bell, and you're already drifting forward to meet him. You ease now into a slower rhythm, letting all the noise of Jake's world fade into a soft, distant hum. Everything that felt loud, fast, chaotic, or intense settles gently at the edges of your awareness,
like ripples on a lake after the last stone drops. You picture yourself stepping away from the gym, the bright lights dimming behind you, the air cooling as you walk into a calm, open night. The sky stretches wide above you, soft, deep, peaceful, a place where nothing needs to be proved and nothing needs to be chased. In this quiet space, you let your breath fall into a slower pattern, the kind of slow that makes your shoulders loosen, the kind of slow that tells your body it's safe to rest now. All the energy of Jake's story, the ambition, the noise, the reinventions, dissolves into something gentle, something far away, something you can set down for the night. You imagine the distant echo of a boxing bell fading into silence, replaced by the soft hum of nighttime air. The kind of quiet that holds you, not the kind that asks anything from you. A quiet that reminds you that you've done enough for today, that you are enough. If your thoughts wander, let them wander softly. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. If your mind drifts in and out of the narrative, that's okay. That's exactly what this moment is meant for. Just follow the slow rhythm beneath everything, the part of you that already knows how to rest. And as you settle deeper into your pillow, breathing slow and steady, you let the story drift away like a leaf on water, floating gently into the dark. Tonight, you don't have to fight anything. You don't have to chase anything. You're allowed to simply rest. Sweet dreams.